Good morning. Welcome to the CSLDallas Science of Mind class. We've just been talking about how beautiful Terry Becker's art is and how fabulous it is to be sitting in amongst her artwork as we are in this class every Sunday this month. I'm Dr. Petra, and I'm delighted that you're in the room, and I'm delighted that you're online. We are at the beginning of the chapter What It Does on page 41, the Riddle of Simplicity. It is beautiful and true. It is a beautiful and true thought to realize that everyone stands in the shadow of a mighty mind, a pure intelligence, and a divine givingness. Not alone unto the great comes the soft tread of the unseen guest. Right, so, and later on, it's at the very bottom of that page. We have made a riddle of simplicity. Therefore, we have not read the sermon written in stones, nor interpreted the light of love running through life. So one of the things that we find in the science of mind is the desire for the simplicity and the directness of our spiritual work. So much of spirituality, religion, mysticism has been filtered through, on the one hand, cultural language, whatever time period, whatever area of the globe, and also a way of being embedded in the world that was very filled with myth and story. And so the conversation about God or divinity or life or creation has been for thousands of years couched in these myths and stories. And really the big reason for that is the experience of humanity was very embedded in their own lives and embedded in nature. And the description of life came from each group's individual experience, right? And they were able to explain things by telling stories. In the scientific revolution, we moved to a more fact-based way of understanding the physical world and trying to explain reality. We moved to a much more fact-based viewpoint, which is the seed of all the conversations, particularly around ancient scriptures, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible, is this factual. And it's only in the last 300 to 400 years that the literal reading of the Bible became such a significant thing. And it's because the way in which we've learned to explain reality has moved from story to a more scientific, fact-based language. That has also disembedded us from our experience of the divinity in a lot of ways. It has disembedded us in our heartfelt, lived experience of the sacredness of life. And so to reaffirm that or rediscover that or remember that, there is a lot of impulse in the spiritual or religious context to especially in mysticism, to use very esoteric, mystical language, which can be very daunting to ordinary human beings like you and me, right? We're not living in a monastery. We're not hermits somewhere on a mountaintop. We're not necessarily devoting our entire life, 100% of the time, to the pursuit of the experience of the divine. Doesn't mean we can't have that experience. But we're more, how do we want to say this? So one of the Science of Mind's project is to make this whole thing more accessible and less esoteric. And so this idea that we make it much more complicated than it needs to be. How many of us feel like enlightenment is very, very far away? Like, that's for sages and saints, right? No, every time that you have a deep moment of inspiration and experience a moment of truth, you are experiencing a moment of enlightenment. Every time that you have an experience of oneness or a deep sense of peace and connection, you are in fact experiencing the presence. As the mystics have been talking about, whether it's Rumi or Meister Eckhart or Teresa of Avila or Buddha or Jesus, you are in fact in that moment having that same experience. The problem is it's been so couched in religious terms, and those religious terms have been embedded in cultural terms, which have been embedded in myth and legend and story. And then all of that got, what do we want to say? All of that, because of our scientific viewpoint, we look at it and we say, well, those are the facts. So if we're not having exactly that experience, or we can't talk about it exactly that way, then it's too far away and it's very difficult for us to get to. And this is simply not the case. So I want to read this statement again. I love this statement. We have made a riddle out of simplicity. Therefore, we have not read the sermons written in stones or interpreted the light of love running through life. So science of mind and New Thought and many progressive spiritualities are actually riding in on this idea of facts. More importantly, looking at nature and what are the principles that nature reveals to us? What are the truths that nature reveals to us? And recognizing that if there is a deep truth to the mystical understanding as above, so below, that if we can look at so below and extrapolate the principles and laws and see the sermon written in stone, in the stones, then we can, in fact, have some understanding and some comprehension of this infinite reality. And so we want to release ourselves from this belief that it's hard, that it's far away, that it's really difficult for us to have these experiences. It's not. We have to decide they're important. We have to do the practices. We have to be diligent about it, right? No different than if you decide to take up a sport, an art, a music instrument, or quite frankly, learn how to do business in a whole new way, or reinvent yourself from one business to another. In every case, right, there's things to learn, things to practice, and we have to be diligent about reshaping our understanding. And our spirituality is really no different. And we have, yes. And so the other thing we want to say is that New Thought was also not only born out of the mystical traditions and the Gnostic traditions, but one of its precursors is Theosophy and Transcendentalism. Theosophy was very, very much involved in the mystery schools. We also have the tent revivals, the healings, in spiritualism in the 1800s, and so there's a lot of emotionality around spirituality, a lot of trappings of it's a mystery and you have to be initiated into it, and it's special and it's only for certain people, right? And New Thought and Science of Mind completely undercuts that because we understand that it's one life. Therefore, that life, that light, that love is present and available for each and every one of us. We don't have to be special. Or we could say it the other way around, right? We are already special. I'm very special. So are you and you and you and you and you, right? Special isn't a comparison. It's a recognition that we are already the place where the light is showing up. The divine incarnation is inherent in our nature. We are immersed in an infinite knowingness. The question is, how much of this reality are we going to express in our own lives? And to express it, we have to accept it, own it, realize that this is the truth, and continually seek to, in a very simple and open manner, keep ourselves from making it more difficult. Keep ourselves from trying to follow in the footsteps of something or someone that feels very enlightened or very spiritual or holy and pious. The direct approach is always the best and the most effective. Insofar as anyone has spoken the truth, that person has proclaimed God. It matters not what their particular approach may have been. The scientist and the philosopher, the priest and the professor, the humanitarian and the empire builder all have caught some gleam of the eternal glory, and each has spoken in their own tongue that language which is of itself universal. Let us do away with a ponderosity. I love that word. Let us do away with a ponderosity of thought and approach the thing simply and quietly. It is the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. It cannot give us more. It has already given us all. We have not yet accepted the greater gift. Spiritual wisdom says that God manifests through everything and is incarnated in all people, that all is divinity, and that nature itself is the body of God. Right? The light comes to everyone and is flowing through everyone and everything. It's the same light, it's the same life. And that's the sort of paradox. I remember when I was a teenager, somebody said this to me and gave me a little plaque, and it said, "You are unique, just like everybody else." Right? And that's the paradox. Yes, each one of us is a light of life, but that's not separate, or that's not in opposition to anyone else also being the light. If it's an infinite light, it is in fact expressing itself everywhere, and that includes us. And so our task in our spiritual awareness and our spiritual growth is to try to make this a very straightforward, simple way of engaging without a lot of the trappings of religious dogma or esoteric mystery. There's enough mystery in life as it is, just the joy-filled unfolding and the serendipities that happen and the beauty that is expressing itself. We don't need to pile on more mysteries or something that's so mysterious that we feel as though we're never going to be able to comprehend it or never be able to experience it. And of course, the very belief that we'll never be able to comprehend it or never be able to experience it, what happens? The law says, okay, you're right. You're never going to be able to comprehend it. And you're never going to be able to experience it. Now, are we going to comprehend and experience all of the infinite? Of course not. Because we are experiencing it as finite, individualized expressions of the one. We're not going to know all that there is to know. We're not going to experience, we don't become the one infinite reality. But the universal is expressing itself within us, as us. And there is a way in which we can open the door, open the window, or let us say, remember that there is no bar that separates the universal and the individual, that it's actually this magnificent continuum. And so one of the things we'll learn as we wander through the science of mind and this lovely book is that everything resolves itself into a paradox. And if we are uncomfortable with holding the paradox, if we require things to be either or, we'll constantly find ourselves battling with our own understanding, right? The universe is individualizing itself as us, and as we individualize the universe, we are actually becoming more universal. And those things are simultaneously true. We're simultaneously spiritual beings having this beautiful human experience. These things are simultaneously true. And the wholeness of it is that it's a both and. And sometimes we play more on one side than the other, and sometimes we have to really expand our mind and try to bend it around through imagery, metaphor, myth, and legend. That's how we can hold the both and, right? Is to tell ourselves stories. Look for it in nature. See when we have experienced it that allows us to live in the complexity of the paradox. And this really grows us up spiritually, right? Being able to hold the paradox grows us up spiritually. We don't have to have the simple answer or the right answer, the only answer. There's a deeper, richer, and more nuanced experience of life and of the wholeness that it is. So here is the question, what makes it difficult for us? What makes it difficult for you? How do you tie yourself in knots when you think about spirituality or you seek to grow in your spiritual understanding? Not necessarily purely in your practice. We spend a lot of time talking about application, but we actually have to recognize that there's something we're seeking to understand and to embrace and to ultimately embody as truth. What stands in your way? What belief, what old idea, what struggle do you have with moving into this simple yet paradoxical understanding? So that's our question for the morning. So while you guys are pondering it here in the room, you guys can ponder it there online. We'll say good morning to Ryan and to Richard and see what's going on.
Well, good morning to you too, Dr. Petra, and wonderful morning to everybody here in the room. I appreciate you for joining us, and especially for those who are all around the world joining us this evening. I appreciate you for joining us on Facebook Live too. And a special shout out to all of those who are participating inside of Zoom. We'd love to hear from you as well. And this is an interactive discussion, so we really love your participation. And the folks here in the room, raise your hand. I like to get the blood flowing after she's asked that juicy question. Because you already were just sitting there thinking, you're like, hold on a second here. So we love to get your blood flowing. And for those who are here in the room, I'll have my iconic Richard over here help us out. Just please raise your hand and then say your name and whatever your comment or question is so that folks online can hear you and they can participate as well. And for those who are joining us in the Zoom room, we'd love to hear from you as well, and you can do that by hitting your raise the hand icon located down below. So I guess your blood is getting flowing through your finger. Is that how that's working for y'all? It's
right.
Great to hear from you too. So
that's right.
All you have to do is hit that icon, and then I can bring you into the room. And then for those who are on Facebook Live, feel free to put your questions and comments inside of the chat, and I'll bring that into the room as well. And for anybody who does put the comments in the chat, I try to make those anonymous, so then that way we can continue to have a safe container of spiritual growth.
Right.
So anybody here in the room, just want to poll the room before I go to some people that are online.
Jerry,
yeah.
did you have a comment? Oh, no.
Which direction do we go?
Nope. Worse, we need more coffee. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, here we go. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Carmen, and I can relate to what you were saying, Petra. I remember when I decided to go to college, and I visioned, I had a flash that I was going to graduate. I see myself crossing the stage, but for me to start, I had concerns because I was a single mother of 4 kids, and so it's like daycare, transportation, and so. But I still went and registered. I still seen the end result. Yes. But I let that worry go about daycare, and when I did, I met a lot of new different people, And I found someone to watch my kids and went above and beyond after hours
Wow.
to watch my kids so that I can go to school and work and everything. So I think letting go of that how and what
Yes.
is going to happen, that stops us from actually completing, completing the end result.
Yes.
And then I feel that I had to let go of some beliefs I had, because when I decided to go to school, you on TV you see 901 Beverly Hills kids, 2-parent household driving convertible BMWs and not having no worry, and then me from a fixed income family, going to Fresno State, do I actually see myself
Yes.
worthy enough to do that? Am I smart enough? Do I have enough money? And then on top of that, like I said, being a single mom, so I had to let go of all those beliefs and say that I am worthy and that I can do it. And so I think you are right. I think that you can apply, meditation but you actually have to believe.
Yes.
You have to know. You have to
Yes.
know that you can.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of our belief stops us or delays us from actually completing something that we know that it's possible to do.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Carmen. I hope you have inspired a lot of people, right? Because that's exactly what happens. We get all involved in the how is it going to happen and all the reasons why it can't and all the ways it's not going to and all that stuff that's going on here. And the simplicity of it is to hold the end result, take the first step and trust the process. And keep recognizing that we're as much a part of life as anybody else, anything else. And that's the work. I'm imagining that wasn't necessarily always easy to do, right? And so when we talk about spiritual discipline, that's the discipline we're talking about. The discipline of saying, no, I'm just not going to worry about that. I am going to keep myself focused and I'm going to believe that I can, right? That is the fundamental discipline, recognizing those false thoughts or those old beliefs and deciding to believe in a spiritual truth that maybe we haven't yet even proved to ourselves. But in the believing it and the working it, then we prove it to ourselves, as you have so beautifully done. Thank you for sharing that. Yay. All right, I've got a comment here, and it looks like you have a comment online. Okay, right here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi,
I'm
Sheila.
Sheila. Thank you for your question. I can relate to Carmen because I did that several years ago, and by putting away all those negative beliefs and I can't do this, and I did go to college, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm on the other phase of life of retirement. And I've got the beauty of being surrounded with a lot of nature because that's how I've created my world. But I started reading in preparation for our Irish trip, the Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, reading about St. Bridget and John Alexander Scott, and then one of my favorites, John Muir, and I was sitting there in the chair crying, and I thought, oh my God, these are things I've believed all my life, but I guess I get caught up in society and making a living and
Yes.
providing for the child and blah, blah, blah. I'm sitting in my chair being retired going, now the landscape is wide open. How do I manage all this freedom to embrace it? And I guess the answer for me is in little bits.
In little bits. That's exactly
And sometimes
right.
little bits are big bits, but
Right.
sometimes it feels overwhelmingly so good. Can I take it all in at once and not overwhelm myself?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, right? And I heard two really important things that you said, Sheila, right? We are overwhelmed by our own freedom, right? Can we take it all in? And so that's when we do really have to practice accepting our good. It really can be that good. It really can be. There's no requirement for us to suffer. There's no requirement for things to be hard or effortful. There is an unfolding ease in life and in nature itself. And so, but that's not how we're raised. That's not how and so really breathing into that. And then the other word I heard you use is, well, how do I manage this freedom? And I would say right there is that you don't. Right? We don't manage it. Hold the end result, which is the joy of experiencing and expressing it. And then, as you said, little bits. Feel the impulse and the pull as it unfolds for you, and celebrate your good. Because the more good that you can have, right, the more you're creating a new consciousness in collective consciousness as well that says, no, really, it can be good. Right now, humanity still believes that suffering is the way in which we grow. And that's not required. We do suffer and we do grow from that. But we can also grow into our good, which means now we're growing into our creative expression, into our joy, into what it is that we have actually come here to do and to be. So thanks for sharing that. And it is lovely to see things that we've known reflected back to us, right? When we read or hear or talk with people, because it reminds us that we are already tapped into that one light. That one light is already shining through us. And there are things we do know, and we can trust it. Beautiful. Thanks, Sheila. I saw another hand up here. Or do you want to go to somebody online, Ryan?
Let's go to the person online.
Okay.
And then we'll come back here into the room. How's that sound?
Good.
So Anita, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and join us?
Good morning, Anita.
Hey, good morning. So you asked the question of what stands in your way, right? And so what it triggered for me, or what it brought up for me, was thinking about, my Judeo-Christian heritage and all of the teachings and beliefs that I grew up with, that I then needed to address how to tweak and find a new way of believing, that now match with what I actually believed or thought, right? So in the teachings of science and mind and things that Ernest has said, I can take my heritage and bring it forward into a new way of understanding. And sometimes it's not really standing in my way because I just take them one bite at a time.
Yes.
As they come up. And what I have learned over time is if I can just surrender into being the vessel, then they all kind of just work their way out. I don't have to know how it's going to happen.
Right.
I just allow it to happen and unfold, and just keep things, in the forefront of my mind, so to speak, to say, well, what about that? What do I really believe about that? And find a new way of believing, or a new thought, right? To navigate forward in my life today.
Yeah.
So it's really about that surrendering for me to just be the vessel.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anita. I love that. You have said many important things, right? We don't have to throw away our heritage if it's meaningful to us and if it speaks to us. And we can see more deeply into it. We can move beyond a sort of literal or dogmatic way. And it's not just Judeo-Christian heritage. We've had people who come from the Eastern traditions, from other traditions, that when tradition is dogmatically presented, that becomes the challenge, right? But when we do, as you said, Anita, we begin to hold our intention on allowing this revelation, this new understanding to be revealed, it will be, right? And that's the play of the intentional directive and receptive aspects of this whole process. We are directive. We're saying, I'm going to hold all this in a new way. I'm not going to let it stand in my way. One by one, I'm going to let it reveal itself. And so that's our intentionality. And then the surrender, the acceptance of letting it reveal itself in a new way is the process that we go through, which is really, really lovely. And I love that you said, and then also bit by bit, right? Bite by bite, as things settle. And we can do that with our Judeo-Christian heritage. We can do that with any spiritual heritage. We can also do that with the framework, let's say, we've received in a family setting or in a cultural setting. I certainly grew up with you got to work hard to succeed. You got to, do all these things. You got to achieve. You got to set goals. You got to make it happen. Well, for me, I went to nature and I looked for the sermons in the stones, and I saw that nature doesn't really have goals or necessarily work hard. Nature allows the process of growth to unfold. Every seed is an intention, and there is a constant unfolding process. And so that helped me re-engage in a new way the same things that I desired, which was a good life and some measure of success and all of those kinds of things. So thank you, Anita. I really appreciate you talking about that, and that it can be those the framework that we have unconsciously accepted. Marcus Borg talks about it this way in his books. He has two books. One is called Reading the Bible Again for the First Time, and the other one is Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. He's one of the Jesus Seminar scholars, and I think it's in the Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. The beginning of it, he talks about the ways in which we engage with our understanding about life and the spiritual aspect of life. And he talks about in our childhood, we have pre-critical thinking. Pre-critical thinking is we just accept what we're told, right? However it's told to us, we just accept it. Then as adolescents, young adults, we apply critical thinking to it. And we ask ourselves, does it make sense? Does it fulfill my expectations? Do I understand it? All of those kinds of things. And we apply critical thinking to it, and we may search and research and do lots of other things. And then there's post-critical engagement with the teachings that maybe we grew up with, or the ones that we have been exploring. And now we're consciously engaging with these thoughts and with these beliefs and ideas, and I love that word, Anita, that you said, we're allowing them to reveal themselves to us in a way that begins to fall together in a way that, I guess we could say makes sense to us, whether that makes intellectual sense to us, makes sense to our heart, makes sense to our embodied experience of the world. And they fall together in a new way. New things are revealed. There's a new thought about it, a new revelation about it. And some of it, quite frankly, is to go back to the original intention of some of these great mystics and what they were speaking about and teaching, without the what shall we say, the trappings of an organization then that then grows up around, whether it's in the East or the West, an organization that grows up around perpetuating that particular idea or that particular thought. Even in the science of mind, we have to pay attention to that. We don't turn Ernest Holmes into a guru, and we don't say there's one right way to understand the science of mind, and if you don't understand it that way, you are wrong. Well, if Ernest Holmes were our guru, he would be rolling over in his grave at that moment. Good enough, he's not. We're allowed to disagree. We take it as it comes, and as we can embody it, embrace it, and have new thoughts about it, and those things that don't resonate with us, we have to let them go. And we keep practicing and deepening our awareness. So beautiful. Thank you, Anita. All right, JL, good morning.
Good morning. I actually had this question 4 weeks ago, and I didn't get to ask it then.
I'm glad
which
you
is
remembered it.
Interesting. So I came from a Bible-based religion where I used to even explain the Bible to other people to help them gain an understanding of the Bible and the truths. And so there's a scripture in the Bible that says that some of the attributes of God is long-suffering. And when we explain that to people at that time, the long-suffering example would be like Jesus on the cross and the persecution, and that wasn't fun. He was suffering, and so it kind of built an idea in my young child brain that suffering was a part of being accepted by God. You had to go through this in order to fully be approved.
Yes.
Can you give me a science of mind spin on it?
Well, I would let it go. So you're asking me to stand on another playing field that has a series of rules. That would be like asking me to explain tennis using football. So, do you see what I'm saying? Right? And so, there's...
More so the New, you know how you do the New Testament and Old Testament and explaining those scriptures? I guess that's what I'm, like, do you flip that into a different metaphysical term? Or
you just say that it doesn't necessarily, it no longer fits in a particular worldview, right? From the science of mind point of view, suffering is infinitely a human experience, right? The infinite can't suffer. It simply is. And it is the potential for beauty and love and joy, and it is forever ever seeking to express itself. And that expression is always the expression of the one life, and so therefore nothing can be wrong with it. The hurricane or the volcano or the star that goes nova or any of those things, right? The deer that gives up its life for the lion to live, none of that's wrong. So there's no suffering. It's just life unfolding in its magnificence and beauty. And in the infinite, the impulse of life is always for more life. So everything is in service to life, including the volcano and the deer being eaten by the lion. So suffering is fundamentally so suffering then becomes the way in which we engage in the experiences that we're having. Doesn't mean they're not painful. Suffering is the way in which we describe it to ourselves. So the suffering of humanity, we see it as suffering because we think it can't be changed. The suffering of our planet, we see it as suffering because we think it can't be changed. No, humanity is in pain because we are inhumane to each other. And we should make it stop. That's our responsibility. Our disrespect of the planet and the pain that we are causing physically to the planet and to everything that inhabits it is not inevitable, and therefore we should do something about it. The moment that we do that, we are well, for lack of our better word, we're allowing our suffering to have meaning. Because it's galvanizing us, right? It galvanizes us into, no, 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 no. This is not how spiritual people behave. This is not how enlightened beings roam around on the planet. This is not how people who love behave towards each other. No, no, this is not okay. And I'm going to stand for, speak for, live for something different. Suffering is when we believe that it's inevitable and there's nothing we can do about it. And we simply, and so how do we then, okay, so now this is the gospel according to Petra. Okay, let's just be really clear about that. So how do we then make it okay? And what we do then is we say our suffering is somehow God involved. And now if I can live through my suffering, God will approve of me, love me, accept me, right? Because we know of no other way to make meaning out of our suffering. Or let me restate that. We know of no other way of making meaning out of our pain. Pain happens. There's no question about it. We've been traumatized. We have cultural pain. We have family pain. We have personal pain. But it's when we become victimized by that pain or we believe it can never be changed that turns it into suffering. And so the science of mind, unlike that kind of a scripture or even the Buddhist tradition in the Four Noble Truths, all life is suffering, right? And the way to release suffering is detachment. No, I would say all life is clinging to things needing to be different than they are. We start with what is. What is people, we are inhumane to each other. That's what is. What needs to be done is we need to stop, right? And we need to align with love. What is we are raping and killing the planet. It's our job to reverse the things that we ourselves are doing. The planet isn't doing it to itself, right? And so from the science of mind point of view, it's never, ever, ever, ever discounting somebody's pain. It's recognizing that we have to see what is, see the pain, and then ask ourselves, what now? What is this pain calling for? What's the healing? What's the revelation? What's the new idea? What's the different way? What is that right? And so science of mind just takes that up completely differently. So do you see what I'm saying? So I can't engage with the scripture per se, because that would be taking my tennis rules onto the football field. And science of mind is playing tennis. Or do you see what I'm saying? So I think that it's yeah. The other piece of that is that in the science of mind, we accept what is without resigning ourselves, which is also the other place of suffering. When we resign ourselves, I guess that's just another way of saying there's nothing that can be done about it. I just have to live with it, cope with it, right? Well, you can lose both your legs and go on to run in the Olympics. That seems like you're doing a whole lot more than coping with it. Think of those people. I mean, they're so inspirational. And I bet that was a massive load of work, inner work, just like you did, inner work. No, I'm not going to let this stand in my way. No, I am going to be the best I can be. I don't care. And I'm sure it hurt like hell, and I'm sure they had to work and work and work and work at it. But they didn't let it stand in their way, right? Or we can crawl into bed, pull the covers over our head and suffer from our disappointments or the things that don't work out, or the real hurt and pain that has in fact happened to our lives, right? In our lives. We don't ever pretend that people don't have pain. That's just rude and arrogant. Oh, you don't have pain. There's no such thing as pain in God. Okay, really? Are you kidding me? There is certainly pain in the human experience. So, I have no idea if I helped you, JL, or answered that question, but this is how I take it up. So sometimes sometimes I think it's important. We have to understand that sometimes we're working just with a entirely different map, and not everything correlates with everything else. And so, that's the other side of that coin too. We do get to leave it behind, right? So shall we just be like everybody else and cherry pick from the Bible? I would cherry pick the quote that says, "When I was a child, I saw through a glass darkly." Right? And maybe I needed to have comfort in my suffering because I didn't know any other way to think about it. Maybe in humanity's earlier years, as we were evolving, we didn't know a different way of holding suffering. And so we needed that. And now maybe we're maturing or evolving or growing into a greater sense of life and ourselves and of divinity, and we no longer need that anymore to make suffering palatable, to make it okay. Right now we see clearly, and we can participate in this unfolding process and in the beauty of life and love being expressed, despite the pain, through the pain, on the other side of the pain, right? That's the miracle. That's the miracle of our lives. That's the miracle of our lives. And that's what it means, new thought. Not that there's anything new in new thought, but that we can have a new thought about it, and we can in fact leave old thoughts behind. Old ways of understanding and explaining things to ourselves, we can in fact leave them behind. And there will be no lightning strike if you do. So, great questions. Thank you for being with me on Sunday mornings. I so love being here with you. And doing this walk with you, and just seeing what's revealed in our deeper walk towards that greater truth. So I don't know what else to say. Oh, I will tell you that we have a very special musical guest next Sunday. Next Sunday, Gary Lynn Floyd is going to be on our piano and singing some new songs and teaching us some new community songs. We're very happy he's going to be in town, and that he's going to be with us next Sunday, January 15th at the celebration. Don't miss it. Bye for now.